So let's officially start because it's 1 minute past 10.
Let's officially start.
Okay.
Oh, talk nice.
Welcome to the DebConf Bursaries BoF. Where shall we start with the agenda, I guess, and the topics that were posted in there? Or, yeah, we can do questions and generic discussions afterwards, right?
I think we should. I mean, none of those things are burning for me, but why don't you go through the subset of the agenda that you want to, and then we'll go to questions as early as it seems reasonable.
Cool. Okay. So Samuel isn't here, but he posted an agenda topic about to discuss about the description of essential part of travel bursary request at the bursaries page. And what that comes down to is that for this year we cover travel expenses and food and accommodation, but literally nothing else. So if you need money for visa, that wasn't covered. If you need snacks and refreshments while traveling at the airport, that's not covered. If you need childcare for your kid or dog that's at home while you're coming to DebConf, that's not covered. If you don't get pay from your work while you're traveling, that's not covered. So literally nothing else except travel, food, and accommodation is covered in bursaries. And for some people, that's actually a real problem because they just can't afford the visa fees. But on the flip side, there's also a slider to that, because if we had paid the visa fees, which is quite a substantial amount, there's about all those 29, it's 29 or 27? 27 people from South America that we ended up being bursaries for, we wouldn't have been able to give them any bursaries. So there's definitely some trade-off between paying some of those additional things and giving more people the opportunity to be able to attend DebConf. And at some point we need to decide where we want to draw that line. And I'd be happy to get more feedback from people on how they feel about that. Is it worthwhile to shift that for next year, or should we keep it the same? And I think we have a few people in the room, so I'm also thinking maybe we should do some kind of a survey in the future where we get wider community feedback on what they think is more important. Is it more important to give people who really can't afford it a bit more accessibility to get into DebConf, or is it better to give more people at least some level of ability to make it out to DebConf? Because everyone who got a bursary accepted it, even despite not getting that visa. And I realize that's going to still be hard for them. But yeah, I'd like to get some more feedback in this room. Sledge, do you have a mic?
Are we on? Okay. Oh, of course we don't. We ain't here, do we? So, one thing that seemed obvious related to this as well is, of course, we gave out bursaries, and then it took a very long time for people to go through the visa process, to the extent that, I mean, I'm sure we all saw, there were quite a number of people coming literally like 2 weeks before the conference saying, I've just got my visa, I'm booking tickets. Oh crap, the tickets have got a lot more expensive. I know it's a regular call, and it's something I appreciate.
This is normal in this room, so.
Yeah. We should be pushing even earlier and earlier in terms of getting the bursary stuff in, and make a point of saying, be more verbose up front, I guess, to say, if you need a visa to travel to DebConf, you will need to be applying now.
Yeah.
And the very day that we say you have a bursary, you must be applying for the visa. Of course, because while it might be harsh to people to say, if you leave things too late, we're not going to pay for you. If we warn people good and early, it then becomes their problem, not ours. And then of course the flip side is also for those folks, actually make sure that we actually have a process in place so we can pay for their flights 2 or 3 months earlier, so people then don't have the pressure when they're coming with no money of, oh God, I've just spent $3,000 on travel. I can't. That's my money for the year gone.
Yeah. There was a few cases where people said, "I'm applying for my visa now," and I was, "What? You should have done that a month and a half ago already." But
I mean, equally, for stuff like visas, people should be applying before they apply for the bursary. If it comes to crunch, I mean, okay, visas cost money too. I understand that, but most visas are not that expensive.
In some cases, they were very expensive this year, though, and they required things like invitation letters as well, which also cost money this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and that seemed really, really strange.
Yeah.
But of course, equally, if we'd been able to do that earlier, we could have sent it probably much more cheaply,
True.
much more, in a better way. I don't know, Handwave.
I agree in a general sense that should be a rule. Although this year the rules for India changed after bursaries were approved, which completely messed us up. But yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that visa procedures should be more taken into account when accepting a bid. But if the rules change on our feet, then we can't do anything about it.
Daniel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that you can't move too early because in quite a number of jurisdictions you cannot apply for the visa too far ahead of the actual travel date, because you basically have something like a 3 months or so zone in which you have to commence the travel.
Yeah, that's been true for every visa I applied for. So I usually apply 3 months before the time.
And that's why I said, like, we're not that bad timing-wise, honestly. Obviously, this period in between people have asked for bursaries and then the evaluation and the reporting back, that should be as short as possible. So, if we can make sure that people are more on standby and there's more resource available, we can cut kind of a month out of that, and that is a very valuable month. But asking people to apply too early does not work for visa in most places, and it has the risk of people through changes in their private life and stuff like that have more of an issue of actually then coming to DebConf. So don't move it too early.
Wait, we're not moving it too early. We just want people to apply as soon as possible.
Sledge basically said, we can go out earlier and need to start even earlier.
And he's right. I mean, they need like a month. Lots of people started a month ago. That's way too late.
Yeah, okay. But that's like another 2 months add to this. But then don't make it any earlier, because then people can't get the visa. That doesn't help.
So I'm pretty sure that this year the evaluation process was the fastest we've ever had.
Yeah, we were a day after schedules,
So,
which is
yeah.
quite nice.
I was about to say the same thing. The schedule this year was earlier than previous years. Do we want it earlier?
I don't think it will help, because I mean there is that maximum typical 3 months visa.
How long do we spend on evaluations this year? Was it 2 weeks?
It
a
was
month?
short. It was like 2 weeks, I think. Yeah.
So
We can't do it faster because that's about the time it took to properly do it. I mean, maybe it will be faster in the future, but this year we really needed those 2 weeks.
So if we were to try and do things earlier, it would mean we'd need a budget earlier. That was the block last year. And the earlier you go, the less committed sponsors you get, so the more risk Debian is taking on.
Yeah.
So let Debian take that risk. We have money to spend. And again, we've had this discussion year on year on year. Actually, in just about every year I've been involved in this process, we've ended up being given more budget later on, in good causes. I think it will be totally worthwhile agreeing with the DPL that, particularly for travel budget, we just are prepared to spend more of Debian money and assume the money will come. If it doesn't come from sponsorship, it will come from central Debian funds. We have the money.
So those later top-ups, surely we should be getting that money up front rather than having to ask for it 2 months later.
I'm coming to that a bit later on, so
Okay.
there's an agenda topic for that.
Does anybody who is not an insider want to say something? It's been pretty insider so far. Paulo is also an insider.
Hi. Yeah, we learned a lot of things this year, but the problem is next year it's in other countries. The other country will receive DebConf, so everything will change again. For instance, we learned we failed to send the invitation letters to our fellows from India. We spent a lot of time discussing this, and you should have sent letters earlier to them. It was our fail, and but I would like to back a little more to discuss about. Is it decided that we will no give reimbursement for food, visa, and the other things? Because we are in the same page that okay, we need to be the things earlier, but I think we need to discuss about what besides the tickets as people can request for Bursaries team. I think it's important to discuss this too.
Well, I mean, we can just spend all of Debian's money, but it's really hard to do the bursaries process in general, but it actually doesn't make it easier to grow the budget. Well, we can just say yes to everyone, right? But I think that is not an outcome that the project wants.
Also, in general, we like that DebConf is kind of neutral or slightly profitable and not lose a lot of money for Debian every year. And Daniel.
Okay, Daniel, then Tumbleweed.
No, I think on the finance side, we are actually pretty good, because what High Voltage did this year, I think, was very clever. He looked at the ranking. He said, like, when we could use another, I think it was 25,000 or something like that, to get another set of good contributors, which we would want to have on site in. And obviously, DPL approved that. This is what Sledge hinted at. The overall money is not the issue, but we do get applications of people that just would like to have a free holiday, and it is important to have a cutoff. If we don't know you, there's no clear message on why you would want to be there and why that helps you and why that helps the project. This is absolutely fine to not get a bursary, and I think we have a very good level with the process that you established. I think we have a very good level of, as fair as humans can do this, judge the people and make sure people that need to come and should come and would want to come actually have that opportunity and are paid by Debian in their travels.
So I hear this meme of people applying for a bursary to get a free vacation, but I've never actually seen it while being in the process. So I don't know if we should optimize to avoid that case, which doesn't show up in practice.
I haven't seen in the last 2 or 3 years, but going back a few years, there was one guy who applied every year who had nothing to do with Debian in any way, nothing to do with free software, was just looking for free travel out of an African country. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but it does happen.
Something that was not clear to me this year, it's, for instance, I'm requesting $1,000, and I spend 700 with flight tickets. So I thought that I had 300 for spending with money, visa, and other expenses, because I thought that until last year was like this. And we talked about that. If we spend 700, that's enough. We don't have 300 to spend. Is it okay, or I understand it wrong, or how does it work?
That does bring us to topic 2, because this is actually topic 2. You might agree with me in a minute or two, because on this topic we've had lots of discussions with the SPI about this, and they say they can't do the thing where you get a budget and it covers for more than that and then you claim it back. I'll have to write it up from the email, a summary from the email, because the problem is that turns it into a grant rather than a bursary. And if you make it a grant, there's tax implications to that, and it gets very hairy very quickly.
Do you mean that we need to justify the expense that everyone makes getting there? We can't just say, and this money was spent on food.
You can say the money is spent on food, but you kind of need to plan that more in advance, and
okay.
you.
So if we were to extend it to cover visas, would that be a problem?
No,
because in our first version of the page, it was not clear that the bursary was only for tickets flight. We have to change the page because probably like me, some people thought, I'm requesting for all expense that I will travel when I traveling. So we need to be more clear about this. because on the web page is not clear, on the DebConf website is not clear enough, I think.
So on the website it uses the word travel expenses, and we probably need to define that term.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you say travel expense for us, no, it's not like tickets, flights.
Okay. Yeah, to me it means exactly that.
I think we have a question at the back.
But it also includes, for a lot of people, it includes, you know, you might need a 3-hour travel on a train to the airport or something, that kind of thing, or a hotel on a layover, or visas, or, you know, or anything else.
Some people even wanted to claim travel to go collect their visa and things like that.
And
but
again, if you have no money and you've got to potentially travel to the other end of your country, that's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
Or another country. We've had attendees had to travel to other countries to get visas before.
Yeah. So we need to be more verbose about what. Can we let the question in the back? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I agree with the point. Like, while I was filling the bursary, that travel expenses was very confusing for me as a term, because I thought it includes visas, because I need to take a flight to go to another city to get the visa. Then also I need to travel domestically, the cabs, and also if we can define it somehow that we only mean these things by the travel expenses, it might be very easy for others too. And also regarding the visa, if we can, like, just asking for the total bursary amount, we can ask for the breakup kind of thing, like this is for the flights or this is for the visa. And we already have a column that I cannot attend the DebConf without getting the bursary. We can have it for a visa also, that I cannot totally attend without getting the visa fees, or I might be able to attend something. So that might also help.
That's actually exactly what we discussed last night. Bremner actually mentioned that same thing. He said, you know, we have a needs field, but if we had one specific for visa, maybe we can at least pay some visas for the people who need it the most.
And track visa status, maybe.
Yeah.
Do we want to try and nail down now whether we should accept bursaries for visas or not, or do you want to have that discussion outside of this BoF?
Yeah, sure.
We seem to be skirting around it and not actually trying to make a decision.
I don't think it's good to make a decision right now. I think I'd like some let's discuss it and see what happens.
I think this group is too small to even be a proper cabal. So.
You deal in the one cabals. It's so definitely clarifying totally what we consider reasonable for travel expenses, whatever that decision is in the end, clearly sounds like a good plan. We should also try, and of course I'm pushing this onto a team I'm not part of, so it's easy, try and get the local team for any upcoming DebConf to get really good links for visas and try and get information up front as to what countries might be involved, and if we can give guidance to people to say you can apply for your visa 4 months in advance, we suggest you do it the first day you can, just to make life easy for everybody.
So that is part of the bid process, of course. One of the things we require is information on visas, and usually the link to the Wikipedia page, which has pretty good data on this. What we don't have is the first date you can apply, and we should probably be basing bursary dates around that.
I think if we have bursary results ready at least 3 months, maybe a few days before that, I think that's fine. And I think we were fine this year with that as well.
And then put information on to say that if we told you have a bursary and you can apply for a visa now, do it. And if it comes to crunch and you have not bought your flights until 2 weeks before DebConf, we are not going to bail you out because you screwed up, unless there's really good reasons. Maybe I'm being harsh.
A bit.
well, as several people mentioned, I think the key thing is to be clear in the beginning about what expectations are and what the rules are, and then people will at least know to make the effort.
Unfortunately, due to day job, I know a lot about visa regulations and how to attain them, because there's it is really complex. In some countries, you have both a visa from the government and a visa agency, which is either mandated, like in China, for example, or not mandated, like in other countries, which you need to pay. Sometimes you need to show up for an interview. Sometimes you need to collect or disperse your passport in person. So the problem is we need to write up what is okay and what is not okay, because in many countries there are options to get, I think Sledge said it, the visa rather cheap. and there are very convenient ways to get the visa, and that may be $2,000. And so I'm offering to help doing the write-up on what is covered in a visa bursary component, because I kind of know for the most kind of common jurisdictions like China, India, and so on, what the troubles are and what reasonable cost is and what maybe not so reasonable cost would be.
Bremner's Gobby's out of date.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't know how to use Gobi.
I can give an example. As Brazilian, if I want to go to the United States, I have to prove what I'm going to do there. I can't say, I'd like to have a visa because maybe I'm getting a bursary to travel to the United States. I have to have all documentation, all where I'm going to stay, the reservation for flights and everything. Yeah, I can say maybe I get a bursary. I don't know yet. They will not give visa for us to us.
There's some countries where you need the flights beforehand. There's some countries where they say don't buy your flights until you've got a bursary.
Yeah.
It depends on the country.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Bremner, I'd say close it and open it again. If you
It's easier.
yeah.
Have you tried turning it off and on?
Yeah.
Oh, I've lost my connection too, so maybe Gobi has a problem.
Yeah. Similar to what Paulo actually mentioned, and it is the same with India as well. So I'm a student, and for me requesting a visa was a huge thing, because in the embassy departments and stuff, they start asking so many questions about, are you working? How much are you getting paid? What are you doing? It's like, I'm a student, but then how are you going outside for Brazil for like 14 days? What are you going to do? Are you there for immigration? Are you going to stay there? And all of those other things. So we have to make sure that it was an easy process. I mean, relatively easy process for me because of help from Daniel, from Paulo, and all of those guys who sent me the invitation, which I actually showed them that, see, I'm getting paid for the bursary and everything, and this is what if you want, you can clarify and talk with them. And I got the visa like without any hassles and stuff. So if I didn't have that documents, then I probably wouldn't apply for the visa at all. Because even though I could have applied for 3 months ago, if I didn't have the documentation to prove that I am getting the bursary, it will be rejected altogether.
Yeah, but Gobi.
By the way, sorry for that. From Brazilians, sorry for that. Sorry for that.
One sec.
So I think we're more or less have consensus on visas. I mean, maybe not all the details, but that we want to make some changes and we want to consult further. So I think we're at least halfway through our BoF. So maybe we should sort of table that discussion for now. And I think everybody who wanted to say something did. So next topic.
Yeah, let's move along. So there's two things I just want to wrap up on visas. Is firstly, we need to decide on bursary. What was the actual topic? Yeah, on visas, I think we need to decide collectively at one point. Where do we want that slider to be? Do we want to pay for visas, and how, and to what extent? Because obviously it will shrink our budget a little bit. The second thing is we need to be clear on whatever the actual policy is, so that when people apply, they know exactly what they're applying for and what they will get out of it. Which kind of brings me to documentation as well. But this documentation I added here wasn't so much for the user-facing stuff, it was for the Bursaries admin, because this year was the first year I did Bursary more on the admin side. I did the rankings before.
And he did a great job, by the way, as admin.
Thanks. But what I found is that the documentation on how to do things are a bit lacking. There wasn't much information on exactly where to do things and where to find things. And now and again I discover a whole new... Nicola did it before, so it's actually kind of his fault that...
I'm amazed there was any documentation at all.
There wasn't. The documentation that exists now is what I did. So now and again I discover, there's a whole Git repository full of scripts that that exists that luckily Bremner knew how to use because I couldn't figure it out. And
Mainly because I wrote them.
yeah. So the idea is that we actually document everything in the bursary process from start to finish, how to use the scripts, how to set things up in Wayfair. Because also once it's documented, it's easier to suggest improvements and send merge requests on what you want to have changed in the process, or add suggestions. And so if you want to help, we can do a whole fake bursary run using Wayfair Test, which is a development instance of the DebConf website, and we can do everything as if it was a real a real bursary cycle, and then you can help document it. And if anyone's interested in that, please add your name, and sometime after DebConf we'll look into it. I don't know when, but maybe in a month or two when everyone's recovered and back into the normal cycle of things. Any questions before we move on? Yeah.
I think it's important. It's important if you continue be the coordinator of the bursary. I think it's very, very good for everybody that you stay in this position. So please don't give up.
I really wanted to do it just for this year and finish the documentation and just be done. But because the documentation isn't done, I think I will actually do it for just one more year, and then and then someone else can take it over from there. Then they can test the documentation and see if it actually contains everything that's needed.
You really need some continuity in the admin team. So if you do it next year, try to bring someone who would be willing to do it for the year after that, so that there's continuity and it doesn't, like, having documentation is very good, but there's still some like folk knowledge that needs to be passed on without being written down.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we need continuity.
I think try and get someone else to lead it, and you take a back seat. And
That would be nice. Yeah. So I'll
I heard
post to my
Tumbleweed
list.
volunteering.
too many hats.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't agree with Tumbleweed wanting to.
So can we move to the diversity budget then? Okay. So I guess there's a sort of rubric for ranking people on contribution, which I think is some variation on something I proposed a couple of years ago, and is by no means in the Debian constitution. So certainly if, as part of this documentation process, when you look at that, you could change it. There isn't anything similar for the diversity, and there's probably good reasons for that. It's, I think, easier for us, not easy, but easier for us to agree on how to rank contribution. But I have to honestly say that we didn't do as good a job of ranking diversity applications as we did for contributions. At least that's my subjective impression from being on the inside, seeing the applications, seeing the rankings that came out. I felt that things were more random than possibly desirable. I actually think a little bit of randomness is good, because it gives people a chance, but I don't know. So I'm open to ideas how to improve the diversity ranking process.
That was a concern of mine as well.
Well, I can only say +1. So as someone who did the ranking, I would like to have more guidance instead of having to come up with a system for my own, which is probably different from everyone else's system.
So I feel like I'm probably the second worst person to make up such a ranking system. So I would really like it if somebody like Rhonda or somebody who has thought about these issues a lot would help us. That doesn't mean you have to volunteer to be part of the bursaries team, but help us think about how to evaluate how we should spend our diversity budget.
And who we should ask to help us with this.
And indeed, if you want to get out of doing this, you can always point the finger at somebody else who is suitable.
This year was also strange because we had $10,000 specifically for the diversity applicants, but because the top-ranking diversity people were quite expensive, we could only give bursaries to 3 people from that in the end because they came from so far away.
That sounds depressing, but actually we ended up funding a lot of people who were newcomers to DebConf just because they were close and they didn't need too much money to get here. Yeah. So as far as that's one aspect of outreach, is bringing new people to DebConf, and I think we succeeded at that.
And I think we should always be doing that. That's one of the reasons, one of our excuses at least for traveling around the world is to get closer to these communities. Yeah. And we should be taking advantage of it.
So sometimes I wonder if we should add a slight priority to people who have, we specifically later on said that everyone who needs 200 BRLs and less, they will give them travel sponsorship because there were a lot of them, and maybe that should be a normal thing, or maybe even a special line item saying that locals who don't need much will approve them.
Or we way lower the bar for it and ask a local: is there someone who's active in a local community?
Yeah.
Yep. So I know we spoke about it a bit over the mails, but would it make sense to put Debian outreach efforts into a diversity out of the diversity budget? Because we have a lot of outreachy applicants in GSOC which do fits into diversity criteria as such.
Nicola will be able to answer that. I think that has been done in the past. I'm not sure, but I almost think a previous year that was done before. And I think
so. In the past, Google had a lot of free money for sending people to DebConf, and they were very nice to us. So when we asked for budget to bring, I think, 7 Google Summer of Code interns in Cape Town, they just said yes and gave us like $10,000 or $12,000 to do that. They've been cutting down a lot on this budget, but we've not asked even the program organizers if they would do something for Debian. So yeah, there's been kind of a blur for the last 2-3 years with money from these programs.
Okay. So we might need to reach out to them a bit and ask them, do you have any money?
Probably we just need a separate line item for them and make sure that they're taken into account.
Yeah.
Right. And so one thing that's a bit tricky is that from an organizational point of view, we put GSOC interns and outreachy interns sort of in the same box, but actually outreachy interns already have a budget line. Well, maybe that budget line should be bigger. That's a question that we could certainly discuss. But I can't imagine outreachy interns having difficulty being funded other than that we just didn't have very much money, right? I mean, there's no problem with them as diversity applicants. I think that fits in with even the most simple-minded, like me, idea of diversity. So. Yeah. But the GSOC, I think it's a special case, and it's, as I agree with Nicola that it makes sense to, I think, so my idea from many years back is that the more the project can say in advance, yes, we want to spend money on this, the easier it is for the bursaries.
That actually brings me up to the next line, the 5th item, maybe since it's 10 minutes left we go to. Thanks. So yeah, I basically want to kick some people out of bursaries. This year, video team did a good thing, which I can't remember if I actually did suggest it earlier or if someone just spontaneously came up with it, but they said we're going to ask for a separate line item in a DebConf budget for just video team members, and so that they don't have to go through the bursary process, because it's kind of silly that we have all these people who have to go funnel through the bursaries process who are like local team members who need to get here, or local team from the next DebConf who need to get here. And I think those should just be taken out of bursaries and move over to their own line items, especially like local team from next year, that can be assigned to their DebConf budget. We don't even need to have that. And that's a way to actually kind of artificially increase the overall DebConf budget, because I was thinking that the budget has been kind of staying the same, and we've been asking for more money, and maybe it should be increased for inflation purposes. But if we can take some things out of the bursary budget, we can keep the bursary budget maybe more or less the same, and effectively have more budget available. And then the accounting looks more accurate because we can see this isn't actually like a bursary; it's more like DebConf staff that's needed to be at this DebConf and especially budgeted for.
So yeah, video team's been doing this for a few years. I think we had a team member that didn't get a bursary, and we suddenly realized, oh shit, there's a problem there. So we created a new process, and we've been trying to do that more and more. And yeah, I think other teams should be doing that too.
Basically, we've been saying that we should be doing that for years, and then we finally did it this year.
Yeah. But if we can do it more universally, that could even bring enough to pay for visas if we do that.
So, of course, the problem is if you start doing the put in what we think a local team and say next year's local team in bypassing bursaries, who gets to rank or weight or decide what's a reasonable level? And I'm not saying that the people are going to abuse it. I'm not suggesting that at all. But at least the bursaries team is I guess, a reasonably sensible central location for doing that discussion.
Maybe I will assume that people will want to abuse it, whether that's actually the case or not, just to be safe, and because at some point things will go wrong, or so there might have to be some limits on it, like saying for next year's local team, it's maximum of 3 people that can.
So we do have a budget process, right? And I think that's where these decisions can be made, and the team gets a budget, and they can spend it as they see fit.
So before a local team might want to nominate those 3 people, maybe they can justify 5 people needing to come over, or maybe it's neighboring countries will be so cheap that they can send 10 people. So that will be in the budget process of the actual DebConf before that. And
certainly if they can find a way to get it out of the budget of the DebConf after that, that solves that problem. Problem here is getting teams to submit their budget requirements early enough. It's like squeezing cheese out of a rock.
I thought it did go better this year, though.
It's always painful, though.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way around that.
The local team is trying to get things moving, and the other teams haven't really started thinking too much about DebConf yet.
Yeah. I mean, last year the budget was finalized a month after I think Bursaries was going to be posted.
Okay, I like the idea with the essential people in the CCC. We have something called forced active, which means like you don't have to prove anything. You are forced active. You are seen as active because in your past contributions kind of warrant that you will be doing the same next year as you did all the previous years. So I'm very much in support of that, and it saves load of the team. I don't like the idea to use next year's budget at all.
Okay.
The reason is there's no approved budget for the next DebConf. So there's no way we can spend out of that because it does not have DPL approval. We won't get money out of SPI. And it is just a trick in budgeting that we shouldn't be doing, right? So let's be honest. It is a line item, bring the next team there. I think we, for example, from the DebConf committee know very well who the key people are in next year's team. So, we can easily come up with a list of people we invite. And if they can make it because of their jobs and family and whatnot, they should come. And if they can't make it, they can either nominate a substitute, or we just live with the fact that not everybody can come in and learn here. So.
I think both of those sound good.
But by the way, we have experienced very, very nice for us that me and Adriana went to Brussels to talk with in the video team sprint. It was very good for us because we could talk face to face with most of the people that is organized DebConf in the global team. So I'm not sure if this kind of request for reimbursement can be added to the DebConf bursary at all, or if this is something different. Because if, for instance, I could go request reimbursement as video team. I was included at video team and I could get reimbursement, but Adriana couldn't. He had to pay for all money. So it was very nice for us because we are not in Europe. We are not seeing you from global team every month, every sometimes in the year. So I think it's very nice idea if people from the local team can go meet you, find you in some months before DebConf in some place in Europe, in some sprint around Europe. And I'm not sure if this amount of reimbursement can be added in the bursary team or if it's something different.
I think
it's a suggestion.
Definitely not in Bursaries team because that's for DebConf Bursaries, right? But that can either be a line item in the DebConf budget, which will need to be approved by DPL, or some other special approval by the DPL. But I don't even think the sprint, especially the video sprint, is actually the best place to go to because the DebConf video team is so busy at the sprint that it's not really the best place, in my opinion, to assimilate information. And
yeah, but it happens that in the video team sprint, basically it was people that we needed to talk, like the global team, like Nati was there from front desk, you are there from as bursary team and something like that. It was not the video team, but it was there was people there that we wanted to talk, we needed to talk. So I think maybe the bursary team can give some help if people from the next local team want to do something like that. I'm not sure.
So, is there anybody who has... Right, that's just what I'm saying. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet who wants to say something or ask a question? Because we're getting to the end of the BoF, and I don't want anybody to go away and feel like they were cut out of the discussion. Anybody on IRC?
Ooh,
Do we even have IRC? I mean,
doesn't look like it.
okay. So then I guess we'll let Daniel talk more.
Oh, this
I
one.
just wanted to answer your request. I think the idea, what you did and used the opportunity to go somewhere to learn is absolutely correct, and we should encourage the local team to do that. Budget-wise, that is just the normal reimbursement process. So as you need to be a project member to do this anyways, you file for reimbursement for the specific case with SPI. You need a DPL approval. You copy that then to SPI and you get reimbursed. This works for both you and Adriana. And it is completely unrelated to any DebConf budget or so.
Yeah, just to register that, unfortunately, DPL didn't approve for Adriana. So she had to pay. I get from the video team. I was as a video team member, but Adriana couldn't. So it's a shame.
But that's obviously our DPL's discretion, right? He's the person, or she sometime in the future is the person that decides whether that is justified in their view or not. And it wouldn't change it. If we hide it in a different budget line, the decision should be the same still.
Yeah.
So to some degree that was abusing a process, trying to use a video sprint to have a DebConf get-together. Now it makes sense to meet up when people are together. That works. We should have set aside some time at that video sprint to talk DebConf, which we didn't. We could have done this better if we'd planned for it a bit better. You could also get this budget through the DebConf budget if you allocated part of the DebConf budget to get local team to events in the year, but then that can only happen after that budget has been approved. And again, if that involves conversation with the DPL. So the DPL doesn't want this to happen, the DPL doesn't happen.
I think that's it, unless there's anything else. One more question.
One step, last word.
Yeah, something on the diversity. Would it be possible to have some statistics be public, like people from which countries are coming, genders, and something like that? It's very inspiring to see such kind of things.
It's public.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, the URL is slightly secret. Go to /registration/statistics on the website. /register/statistics.
Okay.
I think that page is not public anymore.
It's not public. You just have to log in. Anyone can see it.
Okay.
Maybe we can put it in the next year's bursary. When people apply, they can see the diversity statistics while applying. That might help them. Yeah, that might motivate them more.
So every year, the DebConf used to publish a report that included this kind of information. That hasn't happened in the last couple of years. There's some vague half reports on the wiki. That's about it.
It's at the bottom of the page. There's some nice.
I'm here in the statistics, but there's a long tail. I think it's fair to say.
Okay.
So that left is registered, right is confirmed registered.
Okay.
Where confirmed is a vague concept.
Yeah, fine. I understand that. I just didn't know what it was.
Something I remember now that we have a debate about include or not include the age, 35 age. Yes. Or remove, keep, or increase the age.
Yeah, I wanted to remove completely, but I became involved too late in the process for that because a lot of us are over 35 already. So giving points for that is bizarre. It's weird. So I actually made a comment for the people who ranked when I sent the email for ranking. I said if people are very young, like if they're 17 or 18 years old, rather give them a point for that. Or if they're very old, like I don't want to define very old. if you're as old as Bremner, you can also get an extra point. But yeah, sometimes it comes down to discretion. Yeah, I think that's close up time.
So the video team can have a bathroom break.
Pick up Ben's computer.
Yeah.
Oh, eating.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.